Hi guys, TotallyDubbed here, and today I'm doing a video review on the AOC 24G2U. Now, I've reviewed in excess of 130 monitors on YouTube, and this monitor might just be one of my favourites, and it's incredible. The 24-inch model can be found for £170, whilst the 27-inch model can be found for £209. So for those specs, you expect pretty borderline, poor gaming specifications. That's anything further from the truth. This has a 144Hz panel, 1 millisecond quoted response time, AMD Freesync support, and yes, that also does run on G-Sync, and I've tested it. It has a IPS panel, which is insane because most panels have a TN panel at this price range. It has a full HD resolution as well, has HDMI and DVI inputs, and has also got a USB 3.0 hub with 4 USB Type A inputs, and even 2x 2-watt speakers, which are frankly quite useless, but nevertheless they're included. That seems like too good to be true. But anyway, let's get on with this review. Now, first of all, the build quality. The monitor has a 3-sided borderless design, which means it takes less space on your desk, looks a lot sleeker, and also means that if you do want to daisy chain a few of them next to each other, as in via your GPU, you can do so with a kind of borderless design, and it'll look really nice. Now, the stand, normally at this price range, you'd expect a non-tilt, non-adjustable stand. AOC have gone full out. You've got height adjustment, tilt adjustment, pivot, and you can even rotate it 180 degrees. In other words, everything you'd like to do with it. The stand is made out of plastic, but I had no sort of problems in terms of wobble. At least this is the 24-inch model. I don't know how the 27-inch model would compare. But in terms of stand-wise, in terms of looks, it's got like a black and a red design to it. It looks really nice. It's not overly aggressive, and in terms of how it actually feels and what it provides at this price range, it's again pretty insane to think about it. So now, in terms of the OSD, it's pretty simple. AOC and Philips pretty much share the same OSD. It's very comprehensive and has a set of different options. I'm just going to zoom in so you guys can see some of my settings. Now, bear in mind the luminance, as in the brightness, is relatively low, just for the sake of the camera to pick up the monitor a little bit better. So I would normally recommend a brightness of around 90 to 80. Of course, your mileage may vary depending on the brightness of your room. Moving on from that, the color setup, which I'll allude to in a bit, I put it on user with the red at 49, green at 50, and blue at 45. And again, I'll explain why in just a bit. Picture boost, which you can do as well. OSD setup. Now, game settings, there's loads of settings over here which I'm going to come back to, but you've got AMD FreeSync, MBR as well, low motion blur, overdrive setting, and default low input lag as on. Then moving on from that, you've got certain extras, such as you can see the refresh rate and if FreeSync is enabled or disabled. So the OSD is perfectly comprehensible, and the buttons are physical buttons, which is great. A joystick would have been even better, but hey, what can you expect? It's a budget monitor. So now, moving on from that, let's talk about the picture quality. This IPS panel at £170 is absolutely incredible. So let me show you why. So I put it through a calibrator, and the average delta E was 1, or 0.99 to be specific, with a maximum of 2.55. Now that was calibrated with the sRGB color profile activated, which does reduce brightness, and I'll show you how much that reduces it by. But as you can see from your screen, it's green across the board. Not many gaming monitors, let alone budget monitors, not even budget gaming monitors, can actually boast this. That is incredible. Now, in terms of the contrast ratio, 1200 to 1, pretty expected for an IPS panel. sRGB limits brightness to 250 candela, so just bear that in mind in terms of 250 nits, sorry, so it's going to reduce the brightness. But in terms of color, video editing, you can use this monitor for that, and given the fact that it's such a cheap price, it's incredible. I didn't stop testing there. I went to the uniformity checking, so to see how the brightness works across the screen. Bottom right on my particular panel wasn't the best, but at minus 12% from the center point, it's actually still very impressive. Again, for a gaming monitor, and specifically for a budget gaming monitor, this is absolutely incredible. So then, of course, I'm going to get the question of, hey, did you try the backlight bleed? And yes, absolutely, I did. You can see from this image, which I took with my camera in a completely dark room, there's a little bit of backlight bleed on the bottom right, which kind of reflects the brightness uniformity that I found. It is completely acceptable, and the backlight bleed I got on my panel, and of course every panel differs because it's panel lottery, was perfectly acceptable for an IPS panel. Even VA panels will have a degree of sort of bleed. So in terms of backlight bleed and in terms of how it performed, it's incredible. So now, moving on from that, I just want to talk about the sRGB values that this monitor outputted. Again, quoted on the sRGB color profile that was set through the OSD. It hits 94.2% in sRGB with a gamut volume of 96.9%. That is incredible again. Again, for this price of the monitor, it's insane. Now, to give you an idea of how this affects the brightness, when you put on sRGB mode, what it does is limits the brightness to around 250 nits. The maximum this monitor can get to is around 330 nits, which is perfect for a bright sunlit room. Right now, the monitor is in a really bright sunlit room and I'm at around 50 brightness and I have no problems looking at it. Now, when you do adjust the MBR setting, which I mentioned before, which is a low motion blur setting, at 0, you're going to get obviously the maximum brightness. But then when you go to, if you're on user setting and you've got 100% brightness and you go on 10 MBR, hopefully I haven't lost you there, but if I have, ask me down in the comments below, it goes down to around 215. Put it to the maximum MBR setting, it will turn down to 112. Again, all acceptable levels given the technology that's here. Now, in terms of low motion blur, why would you use it? Well, if you're looking at this Blur Buster motion test, the image won't seem very clear when you have motion blur off. It might look nice on the camera, but in real life, the text in the background, in terms of the map, will seem a little blurry. If you enable motion blur, suddenly all of this becomes pretty smooth and it's really nice. Again, limits brightness, so that's its kind of con. So, in terms of panel, how does it do? Incredible through a calibrator. But what about to my eyes? Yet again, unbelievable. Cycling through a few photos, I was very impressed in terms of the overall saturation, the contrast, how the colors seem very accurate, the colors seem popping, no sort of problems in terms of viewing angle either, given it's an IPS monitor. Again, I was so impressed at the level of accuracy and color pop, so to speak, that this AOC monitor provided, that I was kind of left speechless at this price range. No complaints whatsoever. Now, I'm sure all of you are wondering, I've come here for the gaming, I want to talk about gaming. Absolutely, I've got you covered. I've got about 2,000 to 2,500 hours of competitive gaming, and as I said before, around 130 monitors. Now, bear in mind, my aim is going to be absolutely terrible because, well, I'm playing kind of off the monitor, but in terms of how the monitor performs, I must say it's very impressive. Of course, Counter-Strike is going to restart the round, which is great timing. But in terms of how it performs, I was extremely impressed. Now, through the OSD, what you want to do is set the overdrive. Now, right here, I've got it on strong, and you might be wondering, why have I got it on strong when there's a few other options? Well, personally, I found strong was the best blend. Even though most times monitors go on strong, they have a lot of inverse ghosting. In this respect, the monitor actually performed very well. There's very little inverse ghosting, to the point where I was very impressed to say, hey, I could use it almost on the strongest setting. Now, the boost setting, which goes on from there, which can only be activated when FreeSync is disabled, completely reduces the brightness of the screen to around 110 nits. So it's not something I would personally use, however, your mileage may vary. In my case, I preferred overdrive on strong with low input lag automatically on and FreeSync off. I disabled G-Sync through the NVIDIA control panel, but that's how I would use the monitor. Of course, if you want to play more casual games, then of course you can use it to have that G-Sync or FreeSync AMD compatibility. So in terms of how the response time of the monitor is, incredible. At strong overdrive setting, there's very minimal ghosting that occurs, which normally you'll see kind of like a purple trail occurring around here. Barely any of it specifically in such a game like Counter-Strike. If you're more of a casual gamer, then dial it down to medium, and there it's pretty much eliminated in terms of the ghosting. In terms of the input lag, yet again, very impressed. I'm using a RoCat mouse, which has a flawless sensor, and I must say in terms of the input lag, it's very impressive. The way it handles the game and my inputs, super impressive. So, Finally, talk about G-Sync. G-Sync worked flawlessly for me, and when I tested it on the NVIDIA Pendulum demo, it worked incredibly well. I didn't have any flickering issues, any problems. So, would I recommend this monitor? If it wasn't obvious already, absolutely. I can't believe the value for money you're getting for this monitor. 24-inch, Full HD, 144Hz, fantastic IPS panel. What more could you want? It's incredible. I must say this is one of my favorite all-time gaming monitors. And for a budget, it's not often you see a monitor excel so well in every single area. So good job AOC, keep up the great work. Alright guys, I've been Totally Dubbed, take care and bye bye.